Hey everyone, Kevin from Truffle here, and in this session I'm going to be walking through something called Truffle for VS Code. And it's a VS Code extension that really is designed to improve or elevate the smart contract or DApp development lifecycle. So let's jump right in. So things I'm going to be covering in this session, it's a pretty short one, about 5 to 10 minutes. I'll talk about what is VS Code, just to set the stage, just in case you've not used it, perhaps familiar with other IDEs. I'll also talk about extensions, how you can extend VS Code's functionality. That's what we do with this extension. Talk about the guiding principles that we've been working towards as we've been building the extension thus far, and also where we want to take it. I'll then jump into the core of this session, which is going to be a quick demo of some of the features. Then close out with just a brief roadmap and also how you can go ahead and try it out yourself. Cool. So yeah, what is VS Code? VS Code, it's a source code editor or an IDE from Microsoft. It's cross-platform, so it works on all the major operating systems. It's very popular. So 70% of respondents to last year's Stack Overflow developer survey said they use it as their primary editor or primary IDE. And in my opinion, it really hits that sweet spot between something a bit more lightweight, in terms of just a bit more of a vanilla text editor, and something more heavyweight, if you want it to be. So you can really, extend it and so on in many, many different ways. And on that note, one of the, core kind of value adds of VS Code is that exact ability to add, extend, or to build extensions. And the very fact that there are just, many, many extensions out there that really cover everything. And as per this quote, you can extend elements of the UI. You can create your own custom debuggers. That's one of the things we've done actually in our extension. We have a Solidity debugger. Things like syntax highlighting, etc. So you can think of it. You can probably extend VS Code to accommodate for that by the API that it provides. Cool. Yeah. So the kind of guiding principles or themes that we've been working towards as we've been building this out are as follows. So the first one is enablement. So kind of really trying to think through the DApp or contract development lifecycle and just how we can make that a bit more intuitive, through kind of some visual tooling in a way. And we do that through integration with both stuff that we've built directly into the extension, but integration with other tools and services as well. Another theme is that of visualization. So kind of visualizing things that are otherwise a bit, kind of hard to reason or harder to reason about. So things like the networks that you might have running locally or that you're deploying to, public networks in that case. Similarly, once you've done those deployments, we have a deployment tree view that allows you to, see things like the transaction hash associated with that deployment, the contract address, links out to things like Etherscan to be able to see, what's been happening within your contract. And then lastly, the theme of confidence, and perhaps the most important one in my opinion. So as mentioned, we have when it comes to troubleshooting your contracts as you're going through the dev lifecycle there, we have an in-ID debugger, which is really, really powerful. It's a step-through debugger, versus a console logging printf style debugging, which is also great and a good complement, of course. And another theme, or another kind of final point under the theme of confidence, is that of security. So we haven't actually kind of realized this so much yet, but we've got some really nice integrations with other security related tools and, really kind of elevating that because obviously it's such an important thing, particularly in this space. Awesome. So let's jump into a demo of all of this. The things I'm going to cover, I'll just kind of, again, this is pretty high level. Got other videos that go into depth on other aspects of the extension. But what I'll cover is just starting up a new project, creating a test network, compiling or specifically compiling and deploying. That's going to be a sort of single step. Debugging, we'll see that in ID debugger that I mentioned. And then deploying to a public network via Truffle dashboard. And as mentioned, all of this is going to be from within the VS Code UI. No terminal. Nothing wrong with terminals, but in this case, we're not going to be touching one. Cool. So I'm going to come out of full screen here. Jump into VS Code, and probably, if you're an existing VS Code user, this is going to look very familiar. I've gone ahead and installed this already from the marketplace, and as soon as you do, you get this additional sidebar as mentioned. Just to kind of orientate a little bit, we have a contract explorer, so all the contracts within your project or within the workspace that you have open will show up here, and it gives you context menus and kind of actions associated with those contracts. Integration with Truffle dashboard, more on that in a bit. Networks as well, so all the different network types that you might want to deploy to, be that local or be that public. You can see here this deployment tree view as well. I haven't actually compiled or deployed anything yet, so that's blank. And then my head's in the way here, but this kind of little help and feedback session if you want to open an issue or suggest a feature. We certainly love that. So cool. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm going to go through this life cycle a little bit. First thing is just creating a new Solidity project. So we've got support for Truffle boxes and just kind of a vanilla kind of basic project right now. We're going to be evolving this a bit, but this is as it is today. So let's do a new basic project. I've got a demo directory that should be blank here. Awesome. And one thing I'll do as well is pull up the output channel for this extension. Oops, that's triggering off a few other things there. Cool, so that was the output of the unbox there, and it looked good. And yeah, so now we're going to go ahead and compile and deploy. As you can see here, this context menu. And I've already got a network created for it, a local Ganache instance. Just to show you how you can do that, you can create, if I want to create, perhaps simulate an L1 and an L2, I can select create new network. It's got support for, forking of public networks, so, testnet's mainnet. But I'll just say select local. Let's say I want to do 7545, oops, and call it, hello. Then that would create a new network. I won't do it because I've already got one. So awesome. So let's say we've got our network and we want to deploy that. Deploy will also do the build kind of implicitly if the build artifacts aren't already there. So let's just go ahead and deploy for speed. Select this development network that I spun up earlier. And again, we've got the output channel so we can see the kind of essentially status of that deployment as it's deploying. And that looked good. Awesome. And then you can see just down here, this little deployments enumerator kind of, or tree view just there. All good. Let's say there was a problem with that deployment, and this is contrived. This whole contract is a little bit contrived, but anyway, we want to debug it. We can select debug, and this gives us a reverse chronological, so most recent first list of transactions that have been sent to a given context. There's only one, and that's the deployment transaction and essentially the calling of this constructor. And then let's just select that one, and it should just jump us straight in. So awesome. And as you can see there, if you caught that, it switched over to the native debugger debugging feature within VS Code. So obviously all the tree, there's different tree views and the toolbar, the debug commands. I'm just going to use the shortcuts, so it's like keep stepping over a bit. And you can see the state, so the decoded state is up there, which is really, really useful. Things like breakpoint support, so I can just kind of jump not that to jump that far ahead, but you get the idea. And yeah, I'm keeping this super quick because we haven't got much time in this one, but really, really powerful. Cool. So let's jump back, and let's say now we'd worked on this contract, it's looking good, and we want to deploy it to a test net. So it's perhaps some other folks can actually begin testing it. We've got Truffle dashboard integration, and we can go ahead, and that's already started. I think I've already started that just before recording this. So let's do a deployment. We can do it again from, this is the icon, another icon way in which you can deploy instead of the context menu, and click deploy via Truffle dashboard. And if I jump back to my browser here, got Ropsten selected, and there you go. So if you're not familiar with Truffle dashboards, in a nutshell, it allows you to sign the transactions, be that kind of function invocations or deployment transactions from within your browser, more specifically from within MetaMask. And that kind of removes the need to include either a private key or the mnemonic in the local context, on disk, which is very, very dangerous for many, many reasons. So let's say I want to deploy this, and then obviously I won't pollute Ropsten, I think it was in this case, with anything, but you get the idea. So that's really neat, and we got the it's lightweight integration, but integration nonetheless, pretty cool. Cool. So that was super quick, and really that's what I just the idea was there to give you a flavor of some of the features we have. Let me just jump back to full screen now, and just close out with talking through the roadmap that we have. First one is fetch external support. So that's the ability to debug transactions that have been on a public network that for which you don't have the source, as long as the source is available on things like Etherscan or Sourceify. All you need is a transaction hash and a network, and then it does the rest. It'll pull it'll kind of pull down the source, and you can actually debug that transaction. That's a feature that we have on Truffle CLI right now, but it's not available within the extension. And there's been some users actually requesting that, which is awesome. Layer 2 support, I mean, we kind of implicitly have it a little bit, but we're kind of leaning in there just, to have, that orchestration between perhaps L1, L2, and so on, perhaps bridging and so on. Off-chain asset support, we actually have another extension in development right now for IPFS support, which is great, for those off-chain assets. Other IDE support is something on the roadmap as well. Might be a little bit more medium term, but, moving out beyond just VS Code. And more. We actually have a bunch more things that's on our roadmap, but we honestly love, feedback from the community. So if there's anything you'd like to see, just reach out. There's a link to the GitHub issues associated with this project in that little bottom left tree view down there if you do want to jump into that. Cool. And then last but not least, if you want to try this out, you can do so in one of two ways. You can, within VS Code itself, you might be familiar with it. There's a little extensions tab on the left-hand side, and then you can just search Truffle within there, and that should be, I think, the only link associated with it, or the only result associated with it that you'll see, and that's this. And then you just click install, or you can go to marketplace.visualstudio.com, essentially do the same thing, and then when you click install, it'll jump you over to VS Code to install it. Awesome. So that is it. A little bit over 10 minutes, so hopefully it's worth it. Again, feedback is very, very much welcome. And yeah, feel free to try it out, and hope it's of use. Thanks so much for listening.